Hello, everyone, and welcome to Office Hours. As always, this is where you can submit your questions about media and production 24/7. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget you can use this QR code, which is going to be coming up momentarily as soon as I find out where my mouse is hidden. There it is. Check out that QR code. It's going to take you to askofficehours.global. That is where you can interact with the show by putting your questions into the mix. That QR code scanned on anything will take you there. Or you can just type in askofficehours.global, and that'll work as well. It's Monday, our business-focused day, and today in our second hour, we're going to talk about scaling your productions as your project's requirements grow or contract. But right now, it's time for your questions, so let's dive in. Alexander, what do our viewers and listeners have on their minds today?
Our first question is from David Brady in New York City. Audiomovers Omnibus has a feature-rich audio matrix router, which I grok better than the noodles of Hijack. Could this $150 package be useful in virtual production?
And Alex, you raised your hands to start out, Alexander, so we'll start with you and then go to Alex.
Yeah, it looks like a really neat product. It looks like a typical, if you're used to mixing on digital mixers, a lot of digital mixers will have a very similar, nearly identical looking audio matrix routing. The problem with this, I find, just in comparison to Hijack, is audio hijack and loopback and all that is it's a completely different design, and I just find that it is a lot more straightforward to use. And I find that when people are trying to use audio matrix routing, typically they get confused because you kind of have to turn your head here to look at the labels that are vertical this way. So I just find with a nodal-based system, it's a completely different approach. Both are valid. I'm sure it's a very good product. I'll have to test it out. So it's certainly nice to have another alternative as well. And Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, this is what it looks like here. And so, the routing here, I think when you look at it, and if we let me zoom up a little bit here, we'll let's see here. If you see this routing here, I haven't been able to, I didn't quite get to the downloading the demo, but it's a very, it's very much like Dante. So if you were doing Dante connections, if you're using the Dante control, but yeah, and like mixers, I really do like the interface a lot. So I think that it's definitely something I'm going to test, and we should get Audiomovers on in general. I think I realized when you put that link up, I was like, oh, we should see if we can get those guys to come on the show and just talk about this and some of their other products. And so we'll see what we can do there. I actually would prefer an audio mixer with less structure. I want to have what I used to use in Shake, but I just want it to be audio. So I want to be able to just add noodles wherever I want and put them all in and have here's some outputs and here's some inputs, and I can output this over here. And I think that would be transformational. I think On Hertz is the only one that's gotten close to doing that. It's not exactly what I would do, but it's closer. So I think that's something I'm interested in. But this looks really interesting as far as internal routing between them. It does look like a competitor to Loopback. Probably a little bit more. It does feel a little more production ready than Loopback does. And I think that the challenge really is dealing with core audio on the Mac in general. It's a constantly moving target, and sometimes recently has been less stable. And I think that puts a lot of pressure on all of these apps to be successful.
Let's move on to our next question.
From the QR code, we got Russell K. from Brooklyn, Maine. Is there a searchable database of transcripts of your shows?
Transcripts. Alex?
There isn't. Everything that you see here on the show is really driven by people saying that they're willing to work on it. So we don't have any staff. We don't have anybody there. So the reason there's not a searchable database of the show is because no one's taken that on as a project. If that's something you're interested in, let us know. But we usually have to get about 3 people willing to work on a project to take it on, and I think that's what we would need to have somebody willing to manage it. Even if there's a service out there that does that, we would still need a team that was going to manage what that looked like and how it worked and how it was presented to everyone out there. So that's what you would need if you're talking about our shows. But that's what we need, is a team that would be willing to work on it. But we'd be happy to have them do that.
Let's dive into the next question.
Roscoe Jones from Madison, Indiana asks, what does a structured network do? From Ross Video White Paper. Why do I want one when dealing with moving media over IP networks?
Guy Cochran's going to start us out. Guy?
Yeah, this is an interesting white paper that Ross put up. I'll put a link directly to the PDF so you don't have to jump through the hoops. But basically what it's talking about is differentiating your data network versus your video network. So the guide goes into the ins and outs of today's signal transports. And basically what it goes down to is here. You'll see that there's SDI, which is our traditional uncompressed workflow. And then you see in this chart, you'll have strengths and weaknesses. And then we go into the 2110. And this was something that I learned a lot about at Infocom was IPMX. The guys in the Matrox booth went on for a good 10 minutes about IPMX and transport streams using this technology where they have a new box that they were showing off that allows you to go in and out from SDI and 2110 to IPMX or anything at it. Basically, it's like the Swiss Army knife of converters. Then there's NDI and the different flavors and variants. And then there's the stuff for the WAN, which is SRT, which you'll see here that actually, let me go down to the bottom of this. So they talk about the performance of each of the transports. So you can see here that the SDI, flawless, 2110, flawless. But then you get into ST2110, 20-22, and it's codec dependent. So there's all these different flavors, and basically what the white paper is talking about is having these transports able to be differentiated from your data transport. So like your servers, your people working maybe in graphics or something, that department, your accounting department's different than your video department. So you have a dedicated structured network directly for your video transport. So it's a very cool in-depth guide, and I'd highly recommend downloading it and reading through it.
Yeah, I had the same thing you did when I saw that 2110 was -22 or 20, and there's two variants. It kind of opened me up to thinking it's not just one thing; it's multiple things. Alex?
Yeah, I think that, by the way, the Ross paper. All I was going to say is everything that Guy said. The Ross paper is probably one of the best collections of all the options out there for you that I've seen recently. so it's in the chat. That Guy just put it in the chat, but it's a really, really great paper to read. I would highly recommend going through it because it just gives you an overview of all the different options that are out there right now, and a really good kind of dry look at this is what these do, and this is what these do well, and this is what this does well, and this is the state of the industry right now. So it's not, as Guy said, you can read it in about 3 minutes. This isn't like a 20-page. This isn't like a 20 or 30-page document. There's a lot of pictures of or tables and just some overview. Highly recommend for the cost of an email, I think is what they charge you for it. I highly recommend picking it up.
There you go. Let's move on to the next question.
Next question is from Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. As far as I can tell, this is the sweet spot for a beer budget makeshift LED wall. Agree? And looks like he's got a link to a 65-inch TV there.
Right out of Best Buy. Alex, what do you think?
If you're talking about a background for someone, 65 is too small. Like, you can get away with it, but it is super frustrating. Like, I can tell you as someone who's bought tens, I mean, not hundreds, but tens of background, 75 inches the minimum that we would ever use behind it. Now, if you go to an insert studio, they often will have a 65-inch screen back there, but it's right behind the person, and I don't know why. I think because they bought them when they were expensive. I don't know. But at this point, the 75-inch is probably a couple $100 more than the 65-inch. You can get an 85-inch for less than $900 now. So I would recommend a 75-inch minimum. 85-inch is really a sweet spot as far as size goes. It just gives you so much room to work. It gives you more options when it comes to the distance. It gives you more options when it comes to your focal length, et cetera. So I think that, but I would say that, so 75 is the minimum that I would buy today for a background for someone. And I've used 55s even and 65s, but it's not an enjoyable experience.
Let's go on to the next question.
John Power from Bendigo, Australia asked, what router or modem would your team recommend for a reliable portable live streaming broadcast setup? It needs to be 4G/5G mobile, maybe twin SIM failover with the possibility to use Ethernet when available.
And Alex Lindsay.
there's a lot of different ways to do this. I will say that what we actually use primarily for this kind of thing is a live view, and so that you can build your own. And we use Peplink for a lot of these networks where we can put our own SIMs in and everything else as backups to the Ethernet. We don't use Ethernet as the backup to the SIMs. We use the SIMs as like a backup. What we do often is you go into you go to a location and they have just enough bandwidth for you to use for your stream, but they have a Wi-Fi that they want to make available to folks. So what we do is oftentimes we'll bring our Peplink in and say, hey, can we put this at the WAN? And then we'll pass it back to your system. And then, and if they're that small, they usually don't have any management. They're just kind of happy to be there. And so they've got this. And so what we do then is we plug their LAN into our Peplink, and we give them the wireless. So we give them we hand the wireless our cellular, and then we take the Ethernet. so and that way people are still getting enough bandwidth to feel like they must have connected to something, but they're not impacting our solution. So being able to do those kinds of things with the Peplinks has been really, really useful for us. But what I will say is, there's I think Guy was using disaster recovery here. I don't know what happens in Australia, but I think that I would be, if it matters, I'm going to use something like a live view. That's because they manage all those networks. It's not the same. It is not the same for you to put a bunch of SIMs in as what LiveView does. They are managing their relationships with the networks. They're managing the bandwidth with the networks. They have an entirely different pipeline for that to work. It's not nearly as stable to build your own as it is to use their product, but they're a lot more expensive. So if you're doing something that you need to have this product here and there, I would also add to what you're doing, if it's available, is the Starlink. So if you added the Starlink as your Ethernet on top of your cellular, I still have problems with Starlinks dropping out every once in a while, so having the cellular in between it. But especially with the next generation of Starlinks, having that as part of your wireless mix, I think makes sense as well.
Guy Cochran.
Yeah, it depends on what level you're playing at. If you can get a drop, I mean, that's the first avenue to take. If there's any way that you can fight, if you have enough time in advance to get a company like I'm not sure what the providers are in Australia, but even this Austin gig that we did for Tesla, we had an internet at the facility that was already in, but we knew that once everybody started coming in and all the people with all the Wi-Fi access were going to drain our line. So we dropped in a second line, and we got another line from another building. So we had 3. Then we had a live view. So you kind of go down the list of opportunities that you can to get the best possible connection. So the one that I'm looking at buying right now, and I did just see this at Infocom and talk to them for a while, this is the popular model right now to get. It's called the Peplink Max BR1 Pro 5G, and this one is about $1,000, and you can pick it up at your favorite store. It's got LAN 1 and 2, and then a WAN, and then you can use their Speed Fusion software to dial this thing in. And that's the interesting thing that we talked about at Infocom. For those of you that were able to tune in, we were able to hang out in their booth and to have little cases for this guy with a V-mount battery all built into one nice little unit. The unit that we used for the show was Keenan's Disaster Group, and I don't know if this works in Australia or not, but for those of us in the US, it's $9.99 for the hardware, and then you get 2 gigs of bonded cellular data a month, and then after that it's 8 gig. To give you an idea, we blew through $350 a day of bandwidth just using Zoom. So I felt a little bad for Keenan, or you guys can thank Keenan, or somebody get one of these to help support him, because that was $700 for 2 days of sharing Infocom with our friends here in the group. And thanks for those of you that were able to tune in.
It was a great-looking coverage. I popped in there a couple of times just to watch, and you did some excellent work from the show floor, and thank you for taking us there. Let's move on to the next question.
Next question is for me. The ATEM mini line has selectable color bars as an output. How and why are these used in production?
Alex.
Generally, that output is very standardized. I mean, it's not those random color bars. It is specific values that are coming out of it. And so what you always want to do is, whether you have a camera, switcher, a variety of other devices, it's great to be able to say, just give me the known value coming out of this so that I can look at it. Usually you're looking at it down the line. It's kind of the video version of tone. Like this is what, I'm putting this out, and it theoretically is the right area. And we could probably spend a whole second hour talking about color bars. I'm not going to do that here, but there are very specific color values. There's a couple different color bar systems. There's also, exactly where black lives is just barely available. Certain levels are just barely visible, and all of those things are specially measurable when you run it through. When you run it into a vector scope, or you run it into your RGB parade, those all mean something, and so it's important so that you can see if anything in the pipeline is coloring that process. It's really important. I mean, it's a basic version of it. The other things that we do, of course, is have color that we're running in front of cameras, which often tells us more because it's there, but having a signal that does what it's supposed to do. You'll see this on a lot of satellite signals. You'll see a lot of, like, a satellite truck will come up. First thing it does is runs bars and tone. Bars and tone, here's the tone, and oftentimes the level that the tone is expected at is on it. There's oftentimes an ID for, like, this is this sat truck and this is my bars. It was infamous, an Apple event many years ago. They got some of the packets reversed, and you ended up getting to see the satellite feed, and it's like, this is the satellite feed for this one. So but that's what that's designed to do. Sometimes if someone's using something like a matchbox, you'll see a circle going around it and blipping. You'll hear these blips as it goes around, and that is the matchbox sending the sync code. And so that also lets you not only see the colors and everything else, but you also can match your audio sync without anybody sitting there clapping or talking or doing all the other things that we do to get sync. So those are a couple different things that are out there.
And just because I had a little bit of time beforehand, I actually brought up a little of a color bar thing. And some of the things that Alex was talking about, these are standard SMPTE bars. And he was talking about barely visible. Down here, the plugge bar, you are seeing that up there, allows you to dial in the brightness of a monitor. But beyond that, there are a whole bunch of things that when you throw up bars and you put them into something like a vector scope, here's a vector scope drawing, you're suddenly seeing that each one of those colors of the bars is precisely calibrated so that it's hitting those targets when it's up there. And anything that's off in the color balance, those little vectors will not hit their targets the same way. You're seeing the RGB plus the YUV vectors there, and it helps you to dial in things. And there's another thing about bars that's interesting a lot of people don't know. If you put them in monochrome mode, you will see even consistency among every other bar. And if you do that, put it into blue gun only mode, and one bar is lighter than the other, you have problems. So the basic thing is these are test signals designed inside a test environment to give you real world data about how the system is passing color and luminance values and everything else. It's a big deal to know how to do these things because this is the basics of setting up everything so that everything is consistent and you get the results you want. Let's go on to the next question.
Next question is from the QR code. This is Kenneth Shirley in Pagosa Springs, Colorado. I'm not blessed with $3,000 budget for a webcam, but I do have $400. What's the best bang for my $400 budget?
Guy, what are your opinions?
We use that Insta360 Link, which is like a $200-something little camera. It's got a great picture on it. You can see that we had it on our cart for the Infocom show. So I would recommend that with a couple lights. You see here that we've got these two Aperture MC Pro lights, and then the Insta360 is kind of down there on the table, and that was our B cam, and we could zoom in a little bit with it because it's got that 4K. But you can see this was a pretty simple setup. We just had the MacBook Air running there with the USB-C cable going in there, and then we had Keenan's disaster group modem down there below, and that provided a pretty nice picture. So I take a look at that Insta360 Link as a
Alex Lindsay.
Just seconding Guy. Yes, I think under $400 right now, the Insta360 Link is by far the best camera out there. There's OBSBot makes another one that we want to be better, but the part of what makes the Link so good is the software. So the software controller for the Insta360 Link is really, really well built. It's really, really stable. The OBSBot software is not. So it's a great little camera. They look visually very similar, but the color science and the software quality of the Insta360, like I own, I think 4 of them, it is a much higher quality. So I would say any under $400, your best bet is the Insta360 Link.
Nice. All right, let's move on to our next question.
John Foltz from Sealands Grove, Pennsylvania asks, I'm building a sports announcer box using a Pelican-style case. I plan 2 XLR-F jacks, 2 quarter-inch headphone jacks, and an RJ45 jack on the side. Anyone know where I can find panels or plates to attach the connectors?
And Alexander, you wanted to get on this early here.
Yeah, so since you're in the United States, John, I would have a look at bswusa.com. They specialize in broadcast-specific products, and you should be able to find all sorts of accessories like this. And if you don't find what you're looking for there, you may want to also look at BH Photo and Video. But usually BSW, because they are broadcast-specific and they're into building all this kind of stuff, you can find little parts like that.
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, for a while, Pixcore, we built our own fiber boxes, a lot of transports and a lot of other things. We also built hand-built controllers for our studios. So we would build studios, kind of self-run studios for partners, so the partners, and we build their studios, and it was a person who was non-technical, and they had to run an ATEM switcher, and so we would use Arduino boards. This is back when Scarhoy was really just building it was before they were building a lot of anything else. They had some really, a couple pieces of equipment, but mostly they were doing Arduino boards. So we were working with them to build those out, and we had an Arduino board connected to these buttons, but we wanted to look really refined. It's pretty big companies, and we'd sit it on the desk. And again, for the fiber boxes, and nothing worked better for us than this. The company is rcicustom.com. And so you'll see that they build these plates out. And so you'll see not only do they cut the plates out for you, but they will label them all. So all the white text that you see there, that's all etched and painted in. And it just, I don't know. It takes it to another level. That's all I got to say. We did it for a bunch of our convenience panels as well. And it, in the little things of if you can afford to do it, obviously there's a problem with you're kind of committing to what you're doing. But if you're going to build a kit, especially if you're going to deliver it to a client, or if you want it to be somewhere and look like it means to be there, having your logo all etched in and having all the stuff labeled nicely and everything else brings it up to another level. So again, rcicustom.com. I haven't worked with them for obviously a while. We built those maybe 10 years ago, but it was a great company to work with. It was remarkably fast to get them delivered, and they were super high quality.
Let's go on to the next question.
Next question is from the QR code. Trudy Kathy White in Hampton, Georgia asks, when looking at the food photography on the Chick-fil-A website, I'm amazed by how good the food looks. What are some techniques that I can use to try to elevate my photography game?
Deep dive into food photography. Guy Cochran's going to start us off here.
Yeah, this can be a pretty deep one. Some of it's not the real food, but oil, little misters. There's a lot of things that are tricks behind the scenes to make this stuff look more appetizing than what the product really is. Of course, a good lens, great lighting. So a lot of times you're going to see some huge soft boxes so that you'll have complete control of the lighting. You'll be amazed if you look at behind the scenes, the angles too that some people will go to get just over the top of a dish. A lot to summarize here real fast, but you'll see like the Fuji GFX 100, which is a medium format camera, and a Hasselblad. Some of these guys that either own these or they'll rent them for shoots. So having great camera, great lens, shooting raw, that way you have a lot of fidelity with the color in post, and then just planning these shoots. If you have something that's melting, if you have a glass water bottle, something like that, where you know that you're going to need certain things behind the scenes, like maybe ice, smoke, these things to add depth. So controlling your depth of field, whether you want everything in the shot. There's just so much to summarize here, but there's a lot of great sites and books on the top of it. But hopefully that gets the ball rolling for you.
Alex Lindsay.
We have a food photographer in office hours in Australia, and we'll see if we can get him to come on and talk about it. It'd be really good to have him on as a guest. So we'll see if that's possible. The one thing to note is there's tons of great stuff on YouTube. If you do food photography on YouTube, there's for videos and so on and so forth. A note is that most of the best photography that you see is not edible. I mean, like cheese, when you see cheese getting pulled up from a sandwich, it's often Elmer's glue. So it's glue mixed with a bunch of other things and everything else to get that to look the way it looks. Mike Emmett Mickey pointed out. Mike Emmett we'll see if we can get Mike on to talk about what he does. But when you really talk about some of these techniques, when they're doing kind of there's some great stuff again on YouTube where you see animations of stuff, not animations, but everything coming together. A lot of times that happens super fast, and they're using motion control arms, and there's a lot of stuff that happens, and it looks like food photography would be a lot of fun to have as your business. It's just you're doing a lot of crazy stuff to get this moment that you need for it. But definitely search on YouTube, and we'll see if we can get Mike on. We'll see if we can get some other folks on. But yeah, as Eduardo Augustine says, 60% of the stuff is not really food. Like it's something that looks like the food that's there.
Last time I was on a food photography set, 4.5 hours to get still photos of setup and then 10 minutes of shooting. I remember I was astonished. They had a particular strip bank, a large thin light, just to light the side of the wine bottle in the background. And then there was something that didn't pop quite enough. So the photographer took a little white folded card and put it just right so it reflected something off of something to hit something. And sure enough, on the screen, it improved the shot. That's the level of detail. It's unbelievable.
We were working with a wine company, and they sent me over a bottle, and I sent them back a still, and they were like, that's the best shot of our wine that I'd ever. Can you send us a behind the scenes of, so they said that's the best shot of our wine bottle that we've ever seen. Can you send us the behind the scenes picture of what you used to take it? And I sent them a screenshot sent them a 4D. I just lit it all up and just did the whole thing and hit render. I was like, I'm not gonna try to take a picture of this. It's way easier in 3D. So I mean, there's some things. I mean, there's lettuce is really, by the way, lettuce. Hard to do in 3D. It turns out it's really difficult, but just the way it moves. Not that I haven't tried, but obviously there's some scars there for me. But lettuce turns out to be. If I see lettuce, I'm like, this is going to be practical. Like we're not going to go. Yeah. We're not going CG with this because
lettuce is cheap.
It moves so weird. It's like it's got all this. So the thing is you don't think about lettuce until you actually try to build a CG model of it. And the problem with it is it's got so much detail and so much variance in the translucentness, and then the way that it's structured, the way it falls apart as it moves is super hard to, at least when we did it, and this was probably 10 years ago, it's gotten better. I mean, and we were like, oh, we're going to need Houdini for this. And we didn't have it. And we were just like, I'm not going to and I was just like, this is above my pay. Like I couldn't figure it out. Like I couldn't figure out how to do it in a way that I was happy with it, So anyway.
And Mickey in the chat brings up a good thing. Normally on a set like that, you'd have not only the photographer, but a food stylist whose job is nothing but to make the food look exactly right. And you stand back until they would do what they want to do. And then your job is to capture.
And as you go down this path, just do a search for Japanese restaurant, dishes, or front displays. It's always amazing. Like when you're in Japan, when you walk into the restaurant, as you get in there, there's all these like the noodles and everything else, but your meal and what it's going to look like, and they do it with incredible detail. It's fun to watch.
Yeah, so when you walk into that little fast food place and you look up and you see those overhead screens and they all have nice looking food on them, that took time.
And it's never going to look that way.
Thing.
It's never going to look that way.
I used to laugh about the difference between a hamburger from a fast food joint that you see in the ad and then you get the real one and unwrap it. And it's nice.
We had a client that said, I only want to take pictures of the actual, just the way it is as it comes out of the restaurant. God. And I'm like, I don't think that you do. So. It's not.
Let's go on to the next question.
Next question's from the QR code. Russell K. from Brooklyn, Maine asks, a client wants to use Riverside.fm to record and edit their audio-video podcasts, which are very basic 3 or 4 person interviews with everyone remote. Does anyone on the panel have experience with Riverside, and what do you use to record your shows?
Well, we've talked about it a good little bit. Guy Cochran's going to start us off, Guy.
Yeah, we're mostly using Zoom just because we already have the 1080p account and the infrastructure, and our stuff's going into vMix, and we have a way of pulling stuff in that way. But here is some of my experiments with David Brady and Riverside, where you can see that you can go in here. You have some rough editing. You have something called Magic Clips. So this was like an hour-long meeting where if we wanted to, it can kick out some what we call social snapshots, and these are just created by the AI. And then if I did want to export, there is a section here where you can export tracks for Premiere Pro or for Final Cut, and that's XML files. And you can go all the way up to 4K. So some of these clips were actually on this day I did HD. There was another session where we did. Let me go back here. I did a 4K. I think it was the next day. We did a 4K session. Maybe it was the first day. Anyways, you get the idea. It's got some basic editing in here. You can create a new edit, so you can do some rough trimming. Oh yeah, and that's the other cool thing is it does have transcription built in. So you can do some rough cuts. You can see the timeline down here, and you can jump to any one of the points in time by the text. So I think it's great overall. The color fidelity of Riverside compared to Zoom is much greater. It is a higher bit rate, and you can go full 4K. So if you want the highest quality, I would run some tests first and then get into the rhythm. Otherwise, we're using vMix to record, or you could also use something like Mimo Live, because you can grab each person and you can say ISO export as well. So you can have and Wirecast. A couple of these software apps will allow you to ISO, Zoom ISO, again, Wirecast, vMix, Mimo Live. So, but Riverside makes it super easy, and it's in the cloud, because after you're done, you could just share a link to and let other people cut it up and slice it and dice it for you.
Alex.
And the big advantage of Riverside is the double-ended recording. So it's double-ending, for those listening, means that it's able to record. It's recording locally. So if the person's on Wi-Fi, that's the number one thing. If the person's on Wi-Fi and breaking up, if you're only recording on your end, you're going to get those breakups. If you're recording on their end, what it does is it records on there and it slowly streams that in the backup. And sometimes if their connection's fast enough, you'll actually finish the interview and it will be done. Like it'll already be on your server. But that was a recording that happened on the computer before it went to the internet, and then it's uploaded. So you'll end up with a more stable and, as Guy said, a higher resolution. So Riverside does that. Squadcast does that as well. And so those are two examples of what there is a. I'll have to go back and look. We just had a discussion with someone that we were on the Michael Krasny on graymatter.show that said, NPR is using this free version of something to do that. And so I'll try to find out what that is. I think it might just be for audio, but it double ends the audio as well. So, we really wish Zoom would provide double ending like they said they would 2 keynotes ago. We're just saying, hey, it would be great to have double ending. It would make a huge difference, and it would probably Sherlock Riverside. So,
moving on to the next question.
Next question is from Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. Leo Laporte at Twit TV has guests appearing on his shows on monitors on stands, oftentimes 2 at a time. What monitors and stands is he using for these? This page shows an example of this.
Alex?
Those are heavy-duty stands that I think Burke ordered on Amazon, and then Burke and John Slanina, I believe, cut off part of it. We had some of those as well. They're like these heavy-duty stands, and they have one bar that's adjustable. The problem is the bar, for the way Leo uses it, goes too high. And so we did the same thing they did, which is if you want it to be a low profile, you have to cut it off. Like we just take a hacksaw and just cut it across it, or a reciprocating saw to cut across that top part. I can't remember what the brand was, but they were $400 or $500 each. I mean, they weren't like a $10 stand, because they really want to be heavy duty, and you want to have these pretty big casters on the bottom. I don't know what the monitors are. I think that the monitors are Vizios, if I remember correctly. But he's had those monitors there for 5 years. I wouldn't try to copy the monitors that he has there for that, because it's. And I'll be honest. I'm not a big I think it's okay. I think it's an interesting concept, but I don't know if I would reproduce. I think Leo makes it work really well. But I think that if you're trying to do your own studio, I wouldn't go down that path. It's a lot of work to have those there and to get them working and to route them and to manage the reflections and all the other things around it. So I don't know if I would copy that that look. But again, they're pretty heavy stands. I'll try to find the solution there.
Let's go on to our next question.
From the QR code, we got Elizabeth DeLuca in New York City, New York, asking, you talk a lot about the importance of feeding your crew. Would Subway sandwiches be a good choice due to their variety and freshness?
Alex, what do you think?
Good, probably not. Keeping everybody alive, yes. So there are. I mean, I'm not going to say that I've never gone to Subway and bought a crew some Subway sandwiches. Like we're in a bind where we need to bring something in, and we just need to get somebody some food. If you're saying I'm going to delay everyone eating for a couple hours because I need to go out and find something better or I need to solve something, I would get them Subway sandwiches or a pizza. But usually pizzas and Subway sandwiches are seen as kind of low grade solutions for crafty, and I've done it recently. So it's not that you can't do it. It's just that generally if you're going to bring stuff in, there's different levels of it too. I mean, having everybody order, the thing that has gotten really easy because of COVID is giving people, you can send people links like, whether it's, Chipotle, but like in LA, there's lots of places that will, like nice little restaurants that will let you send a link to everyone. They all put in there what they want. And then you send someone over and pick it up, and so it's just something that, and you don't have to fill anything out or whatever. Everybody gets their own little link. So that's what you want to look at. People love that as far as that goes. Otherwise, try to think of some, generally, again, it's, you have a different layers of budget. So if you're talking about good though, having something that feels like it's, high quality, oftentimes people want to, homemade bread homemade sandwiches, as James Haldane is seen as good, and not your homemade bread. Don't do it yourself. But I mean, things that feel very, a lot of crew members, like I will only eat salads at lunch because I find that everything else slows me down. So if you have, for me, I just want a salad. I want a big salad with lots of veggies in it. And that's all I'm going to eat at lunch, for a shoot, because I'm afraid of, just getting slowed down, and so you have to kind of take that into account. Obviously, people like some kind of, something you can, open line that you can kind of hot meals that are well balanced, as Mickey said, are the creme de la creme. The best that I've ever had was we were at a shoot and there was this little taco stand where they were making. This is how film shoots get out of control. They were making the tortillas for us while we were standing there. Like they were, there was a woman there that was, flattening their tortillas, a guy cooking the tortillas. And then there was like a little station that you could build your tacos. That was, as far as I was concerned, that was like the best. So anyway, and James says, if you get pizza for the crew, go to a high-end pizza place. Yeah. And so getting a bunch of, getting a bunch of really cheap pizzas is again, it's better than not feeding them. I just want to make sure we're clear. Like we all talk about things being good or bad or whatever. Feeding the crew is important, and not feeding them is a big deal. And so there are times, because of budget, because of time, because of where you are, that you're not going to have a perfect situation. Still feed them, and so figure that out. But if you're looking for like level setting, what people who go to these things a lot will expect. People who just get started, if you're getting a bunch of folks who just started production, they'll be happy with Subway and pizza. People who have been on film sets will have a different level of expectation that they have there.
Let's go on to the next question.
Next question is from the QR code. We have Len Blavatnik in New York City asking, when playing music with Amazon Music, I find my stream stops playing after just a few songs. What gives? This happens with my iPhone app and in the web browser.
Alexander, do you have a thought about what might be causing this?
I don't use Amazon Music, but my suspicion is it's not Amazon, because Amazon has a lot of cloud power and it's probably not their servers. So my first thought would be, what is your internet connection and how are you listening? You said you used it on both a web browser and iPhone app. Are both of these devices on Wi-Fi? Do you have another computer that's hardwired? Are you able to try it there and see if the problem goes away? Maybe it's something to do with your Wi-Fi modem. Maybe you have an older modem that doesn't have the latest 802.11 standards and it has older antennas. Maybe that modem is in a place where you don't get very strong reception. That could possibly be it. There could be something else on the network going on too. Maybe you've got other things you got a backup service and it's uploading stuff and it's choking the bandwidth. There could be all sorts of things happening here.
Yeah, sounds like a good rundown of the possibilities. All of us, I think, who have been on iffy connections have had any kind of streaming content, music or video, pause and try to catch the buffer up for a little bit. So hopefully you figure it out. If not, come back, Len, and let us know again, and we'll see if we can get more details and dive in further. Let's go to our next question.
Kyle Hammond in Chicago, Illinois asks, is an iPad or iPad Pro capable of being a device to move files from a camera SD card or SSD to a secondary external hard drive while in the field?
Guy Cochran.
Yeah, previously I would have said not a good idea, but then as I was working with a guy from my church who's a musician, he needed to transfer over some files, and he was jamming with the Files app. So just the regular Files app, when you hook in. So first off, if you have a device that doesn't have the right power, like this device, it has USB 3, but then it needs additional power because, for a spinning device, it would need extra power. So if I put in an SSD, it may have enough power, but if I put in a spinning disk, absolutely it needs enough. So the iPad would not detect this with a spinning drive because it needs additional power, whereas with a computer, I would have 2 USBs and I would just plug it right in. But back to the Files app, it's amazing what you can actually do with that Files app. I would dig in a little bit more, but you will need an adapter depending on the iPad that you have. You'll need either their little Lightning to USB adapter. They have one that's Lightning to SD card. And then if you have one of the more modern iPads, the iPad Pro that have USB-C, then you just have these little readers that'll do SSD or SD cards or whatever your client is. But yeah, then you have the benefit of also uploading it right to the cloud. And this is where having a bigger iPad, the 1 terabyte or 2 terabyte, comes in handy because you can just copy it direct. Just remember to get those files off there just in case your iPad goes missing. But then you have Find My iPad. So yeah, I guess there's a benefit there. But data in 3 places, always get it moving, get it somewhere.
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, I probably, from a CYA perspective, I probably wouldn't use it as my only way of getting things off of it. I think it's great when you want to use the iPad to deliver it, but I would probably then be using Shotput or Hedge or something else to actually deliver those to drives and be able to manage that. I think if there was a managed software on the iPad that filed reports and did, bit check-in and so on and so forth, all the things that we kind of expect to do it. When we deliver stuff, we're always kind of concerned about making sure that there's a trail of how we did it. But I do think for getting things uploaded, especially if you have some bandwidth, the iPad is really powerful.
Let's move to our next question.
Another QR question from Brian Chesky in San Francisco, California. I find that using AirBnB for on-location teams to be a better option than individual hotel rooms for the crew. What has been your experience? Does this help or hinder work performance?
Alex, start us out.
When done well, I think it's better. When not done well, it's very much worse. So it's so much worse. So here's a couple tricks. We did this a lot. We did it it first began because we couldn't get hotel rooms for the 2012 conventions for the Republican and Democratic. We were streaming both of them, and by the time we found out about it, they had been sold out for months. So we had to use Airbnb to get some houses. And so we got into it. That's how we got into it. And then we started doing it all the time. Some of the crew hated it. Some of the crew really liked it. I think that there's a camaraderie that can occur when the house is the right way to do it, that you can all eat together. It's, the key is not to try to save too much money. The mistake you make is like you get this Airbnb and then you go to the grocery store and you have a bunch of stuff and you put it in the fridge and then you're done and you're like, oh, I saved way more. I had budgeted, $300 a day per person and I'm only spending $125 or whatever. And then you end up with a lot of unhappy campers. So what really worked was, number one is you don't look at the number of bedrooms available or the number of beds or the number of rooms. You look at the number of bathrooms. Everybody gets their own bathroom. I'm just telling you, just make sure, and you can find houses with 5 bathrooms, like 5 full bathrooms with showers. They exist. They're just big and expensive, and you end up spending $200 a person to do that. So it's not much less than the hotel. The other thing we did is we hire a staff person that's going to manage the house. So especially for longer ones, what we would do is have somebody there that would do the meals. So breakfast and dinner was made by that person. In the middle of the day, they'd clean everything up. They'd get things ready to go. Oftentimes, they'd run a couple errands to make sure that everything was done. If wash needed to be done, they did that. It was like a thing. And when you do it that way, it works really well. It doesn't turn out to be much. It can be less expensive than going to a hotel, depending on what the event is and, whether hotels have gotten out of control or whatever. But it's not really about money. But if you do it that way, it's kind of fun. People have a room they can go to. They have a bathroom they can use. They have great meals. I mean, we would hire someone who we knew could cook really well. And that person would come in and we've had a couple that were like chef assistants or sometimes just extremely skilled. And they'll come in and make these incredible, group meals that we all sit down and had. And you definitely couldn't take everybody out that way every night and save money. Like, it would be really expensive. It'd be like for a group of 6 or 8 people, that'd be like a $1,500 tab to do the same thing, and and it would cost you, a couple hundred or less. So anyway, those are my recommendations. If you're going to go down that path, is to really think about all those little bits and pieces of it. If you start crimping on those, the bathrooms are the big one. Like, if you crimp on bathrooms, people are going to be upset. They just do not like taking showers where someone else took a shower, and it's just a really ugly situation. So that's the big thing to avoid. And then after that, making sure that meals are really high quality are the next big thing.
Guy Cochran.
Yeah, as a former superhost of an Airbnb, I've had film crews stay at my place, and they loved it. It just, like Alex said, the bathroom thing can be an ordeal. It just depends on how you're running through. In fact, this last gig that I did in Austin with Noah's crew, they were nice enough to say, "Hey, this is your room." And got the gaffer tape, so they made me feel welcome. Everybody had kind of this little welcome thing above their door, and you have your own room. The bummer is that you don't have somebody to make your bed every day, but the benefit was staying up with Josh Kaufman until 1:00 in the morning when I wanted to go to sleep, but still had lots of great conversations to have. And for the question asker, if this is the Brian Chesky, I don't know if somebody's actually trolling us or if this is Brian Chesky, the CEO of Airbnb. If it is, that's pretty amazing. So, yeah, I recognized the name and I had to go Google real quick. Is Brian? He's the guy who started it, isn't it? So, no, Alex is.
I doubt it. Someone just put my name in.
Well, I'm going to support what everybody said. I've had some of the best experiences in Airbnb shares, and I've had a couple of the worst, and they were all my fault. I just went to look for the price and nothing else, and I never do that anymore. I'm done with that. Let's go on to the next one.
Next question is from Angelo Jack in Brooklyn, New York. Related to the question regarding the 360 link, how many links can be connected and controlled by the software?
Alex.
I don't know what the max is. The most I've connected and controlled is 3. So I have 4 of them. I think you could do 4. I just haven't tried it. But I've done 3 very successfully. You can control each one of them. The problem is you can't really control them. This is why you can always go to there's a help somewhere on their website, and we've built the most requested thing on their site we've done as a group. The most requested feature is an open SDK. And the reason for that is that the link software, the problem really with it is you have to do drop downs. Now you can save things, but you still have to drop down to that camera to do the hot links, and we all want to make that more available. So that's it's really frustrating that we can't really treat them as separate units. You can, I believe, open the window a couple times to get some of those things there. But anyway, that's the problem with it. But they're there, and you can definitely control each one of them to some degree. But you have to do a little drop down to get to each one of them. And I don't know of any way around it. All of us think that if they made it would double their sales if we could just have our vMix or Mimo Live or other things be able to just attach to those cameras and control them. It would be a big deal. Or even Companion.
Let's go to the next question.
Guy Cochran from Seattle, and here on the panel asks, did Apple task Blackmagic with creating a camera? And he's pointing us to a YouTube video.
He goes out. He's running down the field. He throws it, and he is open. He is open. He's coming down the field. It is on the numbers.
Guy, what do you think?
Oh boy. All right. So this is a video that at the beginning I was pretty shocked as to how they brought it in, where Grant Petty has this new camera, and they say that Apple tasked Blackmagic with creating this immersive video 17K dual eye camera, which they're saying is IMAX resolution, editable, and Resolve. Pretty spectacular. This video only got like 1,400 views, and I was kind of surprised because I hadn't seen it around the web. But this was broadcasted shortly after Apple's announcement. And who knew that Apple, being such a monster company, would task I guess Blackmagic is the biggest in the industry. They tasked them with the creation of this camera, which he says in the interview how spectacular it looks in the Apple Vision Pro. So that's what this is going after, is making it look like the real world. And he also talks about putting elements in front of, so using the camera more like shooting background plates and then putting things in front like you would in a stage performance. So pretty interesting future that we're looking at with these 17K cameras and large sensors and dual eye and 16 terabyte onboard storage to be able to accompany all this along with Resolve. So great article if you want to watch it. The link's there.
I think they said it's shipping in fourth quarter or something like that. So it's coming up. Alex, your thoughts about this beast?
Yeah, Apple showed it in the keynote in passing. It was in their keynote for about 5 seconds that it went by, like, hey, and we're doing this thing with Blackmagic, and then it moved on. And Blackmagic put out some press releases. Obviously, got picked up in Melbourne, and it is 8K per eye, 90 frames a second. It's got 4 Ethernet jacks out the back, just to put it in perspective, to do 8K per eye at 90 frames a second would take somewhere between 80 and 100 megabits a second gigabits per second. So 80 to 100 gigabits per second out the back of the camera to get it uncompressed. Now, of course, this is going to be benefiting from the fact that there's a compression codec that Blackmagic's worked on to get that out. So it'd probably be less. It'll probably be in the 30, 40, 50 gig range for the least compressed version. So it's an exciting camera. It is the camera that a lot of us have hoped that we would see getting the frame rate up. So the Canon R5C is a great camera to do this, but it's limited in frame rate. It also doesn't have the ability to go. One of the things that Blackmagic brings, of course, is the ability to potentially put it into a live workflow. So it's going to be able to record, and you're going to have Resolve being able to manage it and having them work on that. And I can tell you, as someone who's been doing spatial for the last 10 years or over 10 years, this is not the first company that's asked Blackmagic to build this camera. And so people have come to them to build the camera, to build this kind of camera, a 360 camera, a dual 180 camera. And I think that they just didn't feel like the market was large enough to go through the effort of it. You got to look at like the camera that you saw there, to have the outside finished, to have parts that are sitting there that look like they're working. We don't think it's working yet, but to have it, that close, that probably was a conversation that started last year, like a long time last year. So this is probably not something that they just threw in for WWDC. This is probably something that was talked about. The latest it would have happened is right after last WWDC to get that far along with the production. So they've been working on it for a while. I think that Blackmagic wants to be on the front end of this, but I think this is going to benefit even if you're shooting for Meta. For the Quest or whatever, having a camera that is all in one. The problem we really get into, if you look at the live stream that happened with Daring Fireball last week, one of the problems is they kind of cobbled it together with some cameras that they were able to get there, but the interaxial distance, the distance between the lenses, was too far, and it felt like this weird 3D. And the reason it did that was because of that issue. So getting that interaxial distance to the same as our interocular distance, the distance between our eyes, is really important. And you really can't do it without building it into the camera. Of course, Apple has its own capacity to do this, but do they really want to manage camera sales? I mean, that's the question, is whether they want. I mean, they have the Next VR team, which did this with Reds. But the question is, again, does Apple really want to be the one that's accountable for selling cameras? And I think that Apple may have its own special sauce that it's doing, but I think that there's a real advantage for them to have a company like Blackmagic putting these out. We're really excited about the camera. I think it's going to be something that is going to be really interesting, and having a whole workflow that just works if they can get to that. And if they're working closely with Apple, I think our chances between Blackmagic and Apple, I think the chances of getting something that just works, that you just hit record and it just comes in and you're just able to edit it, and it probably will deliver these files to Final Cut. All of those things that close relationship is going to bring is going to be really interesting for us. And so it's the most exciting camera to come out this year so far. So we'll see where it goes.
Let's go to our next question.
Next question is from Narcisse by Faith in Accra. I'm doing an event with ATEM Mini Extreme SDI ISO. The presenter is doing presentation into the ATEM. Then from the ATEM using USB Type-C as a webcam. How do I share his presentation to Zoom without having pptx not blurred?
Guy Cochran, help us out.
Yeah, open up a support ticket with Zoom, because you're probably seeing 360p, which is the free accounts. And if you make a request, actually even paid accounts, if you don't request, you're still going to be in 360p land. So try even with a single account to ask, and you'll get up to 720p. With a business account, you can get up to 1080, and that will clean up those PowerPoints. The other thing is, if you're pushing an ATEM into Zoom, I would strongly suggest going via a capture card like the AJA UTAP. That way you don't have any kind of issues with the USB-C out going into Zoom when it does pull on that 1080p feed. There's been a couple cases of the ATEMs locking up when it goes to request that 1080. So I would not suggest using the USB-C out going into Zoom. As much as I love Blackmagic, sorry, I just can't recommend using that connection into Zoom during a.
Alex?
Yeah, so the other thing is that, I will say the Blackmagic connection to Zoom actually works really well. It just doesn't work anywhere else. Zoom's done the correction on the Black Crush. So the Zoom connection from a Blackmagic webcam works actually fairly well. It's just that if you want to go to Teams or Meet or anything else, it's going to look crushed. So the way around this to get a higher resolution, if you don't have a 1080p account and you want to do a presentation, it depends on how much animation you have, and it depends on a lot of things. But if you're doing slides, if you open up QuickTime and use, and this will get you back to that Black Crush, but use something to digitize it back in. So you take QuickTime and you use either make the Blackmagic a source, or as Guy said, an AJA or something else to digitize it. You get it into a QuickTime window. You take that QuickTime window and put it on another monitor, go full screen, and then or you don't even have to go full screen. It just lets you make sure that you have the full resolution showing. And then you capture that as a screen capture. That is your ATEM going out to a screen capture from QuickTime. And you can then say optimize for video, and you will get a higher, it'll be a lower resolution than the pure screen, but a higher resolution than what you're set up for, as even if you have 360, because it'll do a presentation of that thing. And I've used that in the past to get the full resolution. If I'm doing training or something like that, and I'm on an account that didn't have 1080p, that's how I've done it in the past, and it's been effective. You may see a lower frame rate because it's prioritizing resolution over frame rate.
And today's topic in our second hour is going to be scaling your productions as you grow your business. What are the smart ways to add capacity so you don't overextend? And what about the case when you're coming off a larger gig, but the next one is smaller? How do you right size for each? We're going to be talking about that in our second hour today. For the coming week, tomorrow on Tuesday, Manus's Business Development Manager of North America, Jared Van Der Riet, and product specialist Arsene Van de Bilt will demonstrate their motion capture gloves. So if you've ever been interested in the technology of motion capture with hand movement and things like that, Tuesday is your day. Wednesday, we're welcoming blues musician Robert Lighthouse, who has brought his Chicago blues stylings to performances ranging from Sweden to the Hopi Indian Reservation to the Ukraine. Robert will be joining us on Wednesday. Thursday is our video day. This week, we'll be covering the office hours implementation of VisVector. And we are Alex has been working very hard. We're looking at the entire production pipeline for the web that VisVector enables, and we'll be doing that on our Thursday show. And Friday, our main topic is networking, with a discussion of Layer 2 versus Layer 3 switches and why you might or might not need one. So all of those things are coming up over the course of this week. And we also want to remind you, as always, that Office Hours is here to answer your questions. If you're not involved in the back end, if you don't understand terms like Mukana and how you get involved with that, I'd very much suggest that you take time, go to the main website, www.officehours.global.com, and follow some of the breadcrumbs you see there for becoming a little more involved in the community. If you do that and you get some benefits like being able to vote on the questions, which determines our run of show every day. So we always are here so that the topics you're most interested in, as reflected by your votes, are what we speak to first and speak to the longest.